Pathfinders of the Dark. Book 1. The Battle of Mars. Episode 6. Chapter 11. Opening Salvos. The vast, silent expanse near Mars shattered without warning, and Jax was already at his station on the bridge of the human defense ship Vigilant Guardian, the chrono lens resting cool against his temple, feeding him the fractured glimpses he had spent his whole life learning first to use, then to fear, and at last to use again. He knew the shape of the war the way a man knows the weight of his own bones. 3 years ago, a door had opened past the orbit of Saturn, a fold in the dark the survey drones had called the threshold, and the Varithra had come through it and never stopped coming. They did not answer hails. They did not negotiate. They moved in swarms that turned and struck as a single body, because the strange truth humanity had learned at terrible cost was that they very nearly were a single body. They lived inside the weave, the shared sense of the branching futures, every unit holding the same model of the next few seconds at the same instant. It made them fast, and it made them seamless, and it made them in the only way that had ever counted against the human fleet: a step ahead. By now, Mars was the inner line. Behind it drifted the Pilgrim Flotilla, the great slow convoy of habitats and refugee ships carrying what was left of the outer colonies. Behind the Pilgrims lay Earth, gray, coasted, and far away, where a breaking-yard town called Tasker still took dead ships apart by the tide, not yet knowing how close the war had come. If Mars fell, nothing of weight stood between the Varithra and home. Alarms pulsed in low, urgent tones. The crew moved with the sharp, economical motions of people who had trained for this and prayed it would never come. To anyone watching, Jax looked almost calm. Only the tight set of his jaw betrayed the storm building behind his eyes. "Port side, 37 degrees. Now," he said, and his voice cut through the noise. The pilot did not hesitate. As the ship banked hard, Captain Lara Stone gave the order they had all been waiting for. "Weapons free! All batteries fire!" The Vigilant Guardian roared to life. Railgun turrets sent hyper-velocity slugs streaking into the void. Point defense lasers lanced out in brilliant lines, and missile tubes spat salvos toward the incoming Varithra formation. A heartbeat later, a Varithra missile screamed past the hull, missing by meters thanks to Jax's call, the flare of its drive lighting the bridge in harsh white. "Good call," Stone said, stepping up beside him. "Keep feeding them targets." Jax was already tracking the next threat. The chronolens showed him more than incoming fire. It showed him the narrow windows where their own weapons could land, the way a current shows itself in moving water. "Forward railguns. Target the lead formation on my mark." "Mark." The ship shuddered as the big guns fired. Explosions bloomed across the tactical display as several Varithra missiles were intercepted. Crew banter crackled over the comms, the rough humor of people too busy to be afraid. But the Varithra kept coming, and Jax felt the difference in them at once. They were not firing blindly. The formation flexed and re-aimed in the same instance he saw the futures shift, because out there the swarm was reading the same branching he was. The difference, the only difference, the one humanity was betting a war on, was that the swarm read it broad and shallow and could only ever flow toward the likeliest path, all 1,000 minds agreeing at once on the obvious. Jax was one mind. He could go deeper than the swarm bothered to look, and he could choose the path that was not obvious and make it real. That was the whole of his value, and it was killing him by inches even now. "Another wave," Torres called from sensors. "They are saturating the grid." Jax's world narrowed. He called maneuvers and firing solutions in rapid succession, riding the edge of what the lens would give him. "Starboard 22 degrees, elevation -15. Counter-missile barrage on the ventral arc." The Guardian rolled and unleashed another volley. For a few precious seconds they were holding their own. Then the pressure began to mount, and with it came the first thin needle of pain behind Jax's eyes, the old white blade he had first felt on a wet strand at the age of 10. The chrono lens had never been meant for sustained combat. A human nervous system was not built to carry, alone, a sense the enemy spread across 1,000 bodies. Every shot he placed and every hull he saved cost him a little more, and the price had not changed since he was a boy. It had only grown. A blur formed at the edge of his vision, a future trying to become the present. Hard burn on my mark. 3, 2, mark. The ships surged. Their missiles found a target, and a Varithra hull on the edge of the formation flared and went dark. But the enemy adapted in the same breath, the swarm closing the gap he had opened as though it had already seen him open it. "Multiple incoming!" Torres shouted. "They are trying to overwhelm point defense!" Jax pushed through the pain. "Roll 90 degrees! Fire all starboard batteries!" The Vigilant Guardian twisted like a living thing and threw out a full broadside. For a moment, it felt like they might push the Varithra back. Then the futures dimmed, and Jax understood that the moment had been a gift the swarm let them have. "Captain," he said, "they are shifting to a new pattern. We need to." The alarms changed pitch before he could finish. The battle for Mars had only just begun. Chapter 12. The Weight of Foresight. The Vigilant Guardian shuddered as another Varithra missile detonated close to the hull. The shockwave rolled through the ship, but this time the crew answered before the echo faded. "Forward batteries, fire!" Stone ordered. Rail guns thundered and missile tubes launched a fresh counter-salvo. Several incoming threats were shredded before they reached the ship. Jax gripped the edge of his station. The lens was running hot against his temple now, and the futures were arriving faster than he could sort them. 100 branching paths layered over one another like reflections in broken glass. This was the part the training had warned him about and never managed to prepare him for. The Varithra were not simply attacking. They were narrowing his choices, herding the future the way a hunter herds prey toward a killing ground, and they did it precisely because they feared what a free human mind could do with an open branch. Take away his choices, and they took away the one edge he had. "Starboard thrusters, full burn," he called. "Target the lead cruiser, all starboard railguns, mark." The ship rolled and fired in one motion. Several enemy hulls took hits, their forward armor flaring. For a few seconds the bridge felt electric. "Nice shooting," Torres called. But the swarm kept adapting, and more missiles poured in. Jax felt the cost climbing. Every time he timed evasion and offense together, the pressure behind his eyes grew worse. He tasted copper, and when he wiped his face, the back of his glove came away dark. The first nosebleed of the engagement. There would be others. There always were. There always had been, since the strand. A blur formed. "Down 10 degrees. Now." The ship dropped. Their counterfire took out most of the wave, but one missile slipped through and slammed into the port armor. "Minor breach on deck 3, someone reported. "Sealing now." Jax felt the futures narrowing toward a single ugly point. The Guardian was holding, but holding was not winning, and the Varithra had numbers the human line could not match. He kept calling maneuvers and firing windows, his voice steady, his hands shaking, the lens burning brighter with every choice. The ship was bleeding. It was still biting back. It was not going to be enough, and Jax was the only one on the bridge who could already see it. Episode 7 arrives next week. Direct hit.